So, audience, welcome. Oh, my God. Hello, Baltimore Netroots Nation. Welcome to Feminist Buzzkills, the show that is a proud member of the Pink Pony Club. What?
Very topical.
It's true. Very, very topical. I'm Liz Winstead, and I am joined by my co-host, Kristin Hady, Programs Director at Abortion Access Front, because our dear Moji came down with the vid and could not join us like the rest of America in the surge.
Yes. Hi, Netroots. You get the dollar store emoji at Wodale today.
Oh, stop!
I was proud of that one.
I'm not proud of you, but also I love dollar store things, so I love you.
So do I. On today's pod, we are sick and tired of Christian nationalists framing the abortion conversation using faith as an absolute for their violent anti-abortion policies.
So we don't talk about religion and abortion enough, and we do a lot of demonizing shitty people who have taken God and turned God into some weird, wicked monster. And we've got the dopest people that we know to help us reframe this religious argument for abortion care. Two amazing guests. The Strategic Communications Director of Catholics for Choice, Ashley Wilson, is here.
Woo!
And from Faith Choice, Ohio, the Reverend Terry Williams is joining us.
But first,
sometimes on the FBK pod, we don't talk a lot about what we do at Abortion Access Front. And part of what we do is when we witness and observe, because we do this a lot, we try to check in all the time with people that we work with on the ground, clinics, practical support funds, abortion funds, to see how things are going. And when we start seeing violence from white nationalists and Christo-fascists bubbling up in places, especially places where they may be the single clinic in the state or an independent provider, we'll reach out to them and say, we've kind of been seeing this escalation. Is there anything that we can do to help provide support or get some people down there? What do you need? And so last year we witnessed some real shit stirring at an independent provider in South Carolina. The clinic itself is on its own. It's in Greenville, and they have clinic defenders who are really doing great work. But the escalation of Operation Save America and their cohort was getting really bad. Kristin and team went down, but I just want to paint you a picture of what was happening there. So part of the clinic is up on a hill, and at the top of the hill, it's public property. And so the anti-abortion people took to putting up ladders against their fence, climbing on the ladders, and then screaming with bullhorns at the patients and the people who were working there. It became a lot of people who were showing up and doing that. And so the escorts were trying to sort of make the terrain there feel like, uninhabitable by doing things. But there was a plan that maybe what we could do if we had enough people was to occupy the space before they got there, and before they could get their ladders up, other people could occupy the space. So Kristin, along with a team of cohorts that we have from around the country, came down and tried to make that happen. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Kristin, at that point to talk about what happened next.
yes. So if there's anything that clinic escorts and defenders know, it is public property and who is allowed to be on it. And it is central to all of our ethos that you occupy space. We do not cede ground. We do not give them room. And so when we were in Greenville, we pulled up and the antis had already dragged 12-foot ladder up this hill. There's not a pathway. You are grabbing trees with sap and running into things. And so we went up there and we started occupying that space. And much like other science lessons, I don't think Operation Save America understood that two objects cannot exist in the same space at the same time. So they proceeded to try and put the ladder up regardless of if we were in that space or not. And so that proceeded with about a 40-minute assault where multiple defenders were standing in that space and refusing to move while they physically assaulted us with two different ladders to get them up. And I will say at the end of it, they had named the ladder Sally. I'm still standing, but Sally's dead. So we know who won that one.
Yeah. And Kristin, talk about who these young men are, because I think telling who these young men are and how they've been empowered to behave this way is super important.
They are the children of the clinic protesters. So there were actually two ladders. The first ladder, Sally, once Sally went to her grave on the ground, the children of all of these men that were violently assaulting and they were watching got a second ladder to put up. And at one point, it's hard to hear, but the young one said, "Move, or I'm going to make you a flat pancake against the fence." And this is what they're taught. And I remember when we posted this, so many comments were like, where are their parents? Where are their mothers? Their parents were watching. Their parents taught them that. And these people, these men, are constantly screaming about protecting women and protecting children. And while they are violently assaulting us, they're repeating, "Keep your hands off our ladder. Stop assaulting us." I was literally like a fucking tripod at one point, and they're telling me, "Stop assaulting us." The hypocrisy of their mission under God to protect women and babies while they violently assault people. At the end of this, I had bruises and cuts all over my body.
I think it's important to just remind people that this is the violence that's happening at clinics all the time. And this is why we desperately need people to show up and volunteer with us and take up space, because they're there all the time. It's some of their parents were at January 6th. It's like, this is who they are and this is what they are. And we thought in the framing of how we reclaim what's happening, seeing the tactics they take, especially in places like Greenville, where, like, I don't think there's anybody at this conference that's like, "I think the cops are really great. You should always call them." So often law enforcement participates with them, brings them water, will pray with them, will ignore the calls of harm, right? And so this kind of thing happens all the time. And it's organizations like Abortion Access Front and Kat Green here is with Endora, who used to be with Abortion Access Front, who's still our comrade in all things. It's small organizations who are desperately trying to keep everybody safe in situations that are almost untenable. When you have these guys and they're just like profound 2A people, all of them are packing, not all of them, but I would say a lot of them are packing. We talk about Project 2025 coming. Well, it's here. It is unsanctioned and it's here and it's being enforced because people are just allowing these vigilantes to be controlling what's happening with who gets justice and who doesn't. And so Kristin is a true champ. And also, I have instilled a rule that you'd no longer wear shorts to a protest anymore, because I know you like shorts, but you don't want to get tetanus. Jeans are helpful.
Well, I'm good for like 3 years. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, because that's the point.
Shot left.
Yeah, because tetanus is the only thing that happens, by the way, in violent situations. That's a good
They
message to bring.
will never take my bare legs away from me. Damn it.
That's right.
Woof.
Big woof. Yeah. Well, as we've shown, we've ceded so much ground to extremists when it comes to talking about abortion, especially the moral arguments. Religion has become front and center in the fight to ban all abortion. So we wanted to have a different conversation, one that makes the case for abortion from a religious perspective.
Mm-hmm. We talk about this a lot, especially after the wake of the last two SCOTUS decisions. The arguments in both cases from the anti-abortion side focused so much on forcing abortion upon doctors who morally object to abortion and the conscience clause. We've seen RFRA cases. I mean, it's everywhere. You just can't escape it right now.
It's true. And they just constantly act like they're the only ones who have a moral conscience around not wanting to provide abortion. Like, I really want to talk about how we rally physicians who have a moral obligation to provide health care and religious folks who have a moral obligation to advocate for abortion care and reproductive justice. So with that note, let's bring our guests. Kristin.
Woo! Please welcome the Strategic Communications Director from Catholics for Choice, Ashley Wilson, and from Faith Choice, Ohio, my home state, the Reverend Terry Williams.
There it is! There it is!
Hello, we love y'all. We're so excited to have us here.
Peace and blessings, peace and blessings.
And also with you.
And with your spirit.
Ooh! We love that
feel nice?
energy.
The new mass. The new mass. Here we go.
We would love it if y'all would tell us about your organizations and each of your missions when it comes to reproductive freedoms. Terry, you can kick us off.
My name is the Reverend Terry Williams, he, him pronouns, and I am from Faith Choice, Ohio. As Kristin stated, we are an Ohio-based organization, but pretty much all of the work that we do in this space around repro is more than one state. Because we can't stay isolated, we can't stay siloed, and thanks to the Supreme Court, we actually can't just treat our patients in our local state anymore. We have to make sure that they have transit access, so we do a lot of work in terms of transportation, lodging, childcare, practical support through the Jubilee Fund for Abortion Justice, Ohio's first faith-based abortion fund. So a lot of our work, in addition to the Jubilee Fund, we do advocacy and education. So making sure people have access to correct information about self-managed abortion, about abortion myths and abortion lies, and helping to resource communities of faith to push back against all of this onslaught of very coordinated long-term messaging that tells the lie that all people of faith are in opposition to abortion access. The reality is we know at Faith Choice Ohio, and we advance consistently the truth that people of faith support abortion access, not in spite of our faith, but because of it, and in large majorities. That's the work that we do. We've been in this work at Faith Choice Ohio since 1993 officially, according to the IRS, but since much before that in a group called the Clergy Consultation Service on Abortion. So basically, we grew out of clergy who were moved in their moral and ethical center to provide care and access. And we've been doing that consistently for over 70 years.
Love that. My name's Ashley Wilson. I use she, her pronouns, and I work for Catholics for Choice. Catholics for Choice has been around for 50 years. We were actually founded the same year as Roe v. Wade. And we educate, encounter, and embolden the faithful pro-choice majority of Catholics. Most people don't realize this, but the majority opinion among Catholics is actually a pro-choice, pro-abortion view. Only 1 in 10 Catholics agree with the Catholic bishop's position on abortion. We are based in Washington, D.C. and organize all around the country and around the world for this pro-choice perspective. And a lot of times people ask, how the heck can you be a Catholic and pro-choice or pro-abortion? Our answer is it's easy. As Catholics, we are taught the importance of conscience. The Catechism says that we must faithfully follow what we know to be just and right. So we trust that if someone follows their conscience to choose an abortion, we support them in that decision. The Catholics are also pretty big on social justice. And as we all know, the people who are most affected by abortion bans and restrictions are the very people that our faith calls us to center and prioritize in our decision-making. And then also religious freedom, that handy little Vatican II valued religious pluralism, and certainly living in a country like the United States that is allegedly founded on the separation of church and state. We know that not only must we be free to practice our religious beliefs, but we must be free from the religious beliefs of others. So Catholics for Choice, we advocate, we organize, we work at state, local, and international levels to basically say, not in the name of my faith will you take away my reproductive freedom.
Ooh, I love that line. That is fantastic. And I have to say, at my local indie clinic in Ohio, Toledo Women's Center, I can think of one specific time where we had a patient who was really struggling. She wanted her abortion. She was in an abusive relationship. but she could not stop thinking about what it meant for her faith. She was asking us, am I going to go to hell? And I was like, I am not qualified for this question. I say no. But we sent her to the Faith Choice Ohio line where she was able to talk about it. And the next day she was ready. She said, I just needed someone to tell me that and to tell me that it was okay.
Yeah. And Kristin, I just want to lift up the joy and the wonder that we have in partnering with local clinics and with organizations, such as your own, that we get people who send folk to us, not because they are primarily having a moral decision-making quandary around abortion, but because they're struggling with the stigma and the violence that has been forced on them by religious systems that don't represent the majority, but do represent, in many systems and many situations, the power structures. And they get this messaging, this consistent onslaught of very loud messaging, and the silent majority is not heard in their life. So they come to us and they say, I'm struggling with the stigma, not with the decision, but with the stigma and the violence of this society. And for us, like you said, to be able to just hold space with people and say, you know what, you're not alone. Not only are you not alone, you're in the majority and you are beloved and you know your body and what your body needs and what your life looks like when you think about a flourishing future. You're the expert on your own future and the expert on your own body.
So good.
And I just want to say, too, as somebody who was brought up Catholic, sometimes when we look at who's outside of those clinics and we look at those men that we just showed you, right, those violent men, while they are holy garbage, sometimes you can say, oh, yes, I know that. And sometimes for a young person of faith who is coming to have an abortion, maybe alone, maybe Catholic, those guys are predictably awful. And sometimes the more damaging, stigmatizing person can be that quiet person with a rosary who, as the person walks into their procedure, says, if you go in there, you will not have salvation. And those, sometimes I think that we look at the loud ones as the most aggressive, when really it's sometimes the people who pretend to be peaceful who can really take that and make that experience be really scary.
It's spiritual violence is what we
Yes.
call
Ooh,
it at
yes.
Catholics for Choice. It is, I used to love Pope Francis, and now I have a complicated opinion. He has said that if you have an abortion, you have hired a hitman. And that is bananas to me, right? And shows how truly out of touch. Never forget, in the Catholic Church, the people who are writing our policies are ostensibly celibate, ostensibly straight men who have no inroads into the lives of women. They don't have children. They're just so far removed. And they're also obsessed with sex, which is
Obsessed.
and it just creates this dark black hole, this black hole of spiritual violence and shame that just ripples out everywhere. Even though in the United States, 1 in 4 abortion patients in this country identifies as Catholic.
I also want to say that being the coolest pope is sort of like being the smartest person at Fox News.
Yeah.
It's really, it's kind of not that. It's okay, fine. What are the pickings here? The history's not that great.
As an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ and part of the German Protestant tradition, I've had a very clear opinion about the Pope for about 400 years. So I'm not as...
You're I was ahead of the game. I'm glad everybody's catching up.
But I think, to Liz's point, we have for so long in religious circles, we've given people a pass on the worst possible behavior of oh, they're not totally trash today. Guess what? There are people who aren't just minimally not totally trash. There are people with really great theology and who support abortion access. People who have stood up for decades across many different denominations, across many different systems of faith within the Catholic hierarchy to say, no, actually, conscience is important, and your ability to control your body is a really big fucking deal.
Yeah.
To
Yes.
paraphrase,
So
Biden a minute
I want to jump on that exactly because I think it's important to talk about the history of abortion and religion, how it wound up in the hands, or rephrase, clutches of these extremists and their narrative around. So let's just talk about the history of abortion.
Well, I will say, at Catholics for Choice, we talk about the very rich tradition of choice that our religion has. Mary famously was visited by the angel Gabriel and had a choice
Ghost
whether
penis.
or not to bear the Son of God. And she said yes. And if Mary had a choice, you should too.
Wow. That's going to go
know,
over well with those Vatican tours.
Merch alert.
I know.
Mary had a baby by choice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the reality is the Catholic hierarchy's obsession with abortion is much more recent. The formal Catholic Church didn't have a position totally banning abortion until 1917. It was only a little bit before that one of the Pope Piuses, I think ninth, first started talking about abortion.
Can we call him PP9?
Yeah, for
Okay.
real. So all of this is much more modern. Really, we're looking at the last 100 years. And when you look at the universe that is the United States today, and you look at people like Leonard Leo, who have constructed this Supreme Court, people forget Paul Weyrich, who's one of the co-founders of the Heritage Foundation, he's Catholic. Leonard Leo, who is the architect of the Supreme Court, he's Catholic. Every member
6 justices.
Every member of the Supreme Court who overturned Roe v. Wade, Catholic. Paul Ryan, Catholic. John Boehner, Catholic. Like all of these members of Congress and our government at all levels have literally intentionally been put there by religious overreach and the Catholic bishops to advance this very anti-LGBTQ, anti-woman, anti-abortion agenda. And it is like the signs of the Catholic Church becoming this political body that has been devastating. And then we're at progressive conferences like this and the word religion is like never talked about. And I'm always like, but Heritage Foundation is the one behind Project 2025. Let's look at those roots. The roots are all Catholic.
Totally. And also just to point out that once you realize that the priest can't get married thing changed in like the 7th century because the church was like, these bitches are dying and giving their property to their families. We want their property. So we're going to change up that rule. And so when you see the patriarchal spiral of how do we keep control, eventually you're going to get to the narrative of let's control the reproduction of people so that this patriarchal system can work for us.
Yes.
The Roman Empire did not fall; it became a church, right? I mean, literally, like this idea of constantly utilizing those systems to reinforce the power and the ability to hold on to resources. That has become institutionalized religion, whether it's Protestant or Catholic, particularly in this country, for decades. I love the phrase that you used, Ashley, that, the roots are Catholic. The roots might be Catholic, but the fruits are Protestant.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, the real fruity folks who, as a queer person, I like to fit in a little bit from time to time, right? Roots and fruits. But like the roots of this go back to, if you take a look at the Dobbs decision, can we boo and hiss? So the Dobbs decision, because Samuel Alito is like, I don't know, PP the 10th, PP the smallest, whatever, had to list out all of the laws that each individual state had on the books about abortion. And if you take a look at every state, and it was this attempt to reinforce, we're just taking things back to this, glorified, originalist intent. If you take a look at every single one of those laws, you look at the law that was enacted in Ohio around prohibiting abortion, there was a clear distinction in the 1830s, 1850s in Ohio between abortion before and after quickening. Well, what the hell is quickening? That's like an $8 word nobody uses anymore.
Well, I use it for my taxes.
There you go.
Quickening books.
So you've got this Catholic theology that's forming in that era of there's a moment where we can feel the fetus moving around, but not really. Remember, it's 1850, so we don't have really good medical knowledge at this point. We can kind of feel the fetus, but we can't feel the fetus before a certain time. So maybe it's okay morally to have an abortion before then versus after then. They're struggling with the question of how do we regulate this thing we don't even understand, because regulation is more important than understanding, always, in systems that try to oppress people. That becomes the root then for our modern current policy. This concept of like viability bans, this concept of somehow trimesters, like all of this created framework comes from a bunch of religious people who don't really understand what's going on, trying to figure out how they reconcile their own cognitive dissonance. That then gives way in the 30s, 40s, and 50s to this Catholic theology that frankly was Catholic theology. It was not Protestant theology. You have Protestants as late as like the 60s and 70s, the Southern Baptist Convention saying abortion, should be legal. It's the choice of an individual patient. The reality is Protestants get on board with the Catholic roots. We bring our Protestant fruits to the story when we start losing another important battle for right-wing extremists, which was segregation. They begin losing the segregation battle in the courts. Brown v. Board of Education, multiple other decisions that say, guess what? You cannot maintain racialized segregation in society. And these people start looking around going, holy crap, if we don't have this as a unifying issue, this segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever, what are we going to do? How are we going to keep our coalition together? And they end up essentially transitioning directly to this concept of abortion and abortion prevention. Anti-abortion extremists grow directly out of that line. So you end up with Paul Weyrich at the Heritage Foundation, Jerry Falwell, right, who stands up at Thomas Road Baptist Church and says, the three main goals of this church are to get people saved, get people baptized, and get people registered to vote. They pull all of that Catholic theology in to say, guess what? We don't just want power over people's bodies. We want power over the body politic.
Yeah.
We want power through the election of right-wing conservatives because that's where they decided to press their gamble. We want this electoral success to force other people to accept what we've not been able to persuade them to enact in their own lives. Our theology is so unpopular that we've got to force it on.
And Reverend Terry, I would also just add, and maybe this is obvious, but a single focus to constantly create and reiterate a way to make a moralize oppression.
Yeah. And I think the quickening always makes me laugh. I had one of our protesters, I had 3 children, and I had a profile picture where I was wearing my pro-choice garb and I was visibly pregnant. And she shared this story like, oh, look at this woman. It must be the quickening. And I was like, quickening? I've had 3 kids. Is it quickening or is it gas? Don't tell me you know when the quickening is. But you get that kind of pushback.
That's
What
a
do you wanna
t-shirt.
do? Thank you.
Is it quickening or is it gas?
Done. Called it. We're all used to that personal attack. I've had people call my children out by name to me when I'm on the sidewalk. So when y'all are out there doing that work, what kind of pushback have you both gotten for your outspoken advocacy?
Oh, I've got to crack open a water for this. Go, Ashley.
He needs a drink.
Yeah. I will say, so this is the first repro job I've ever had. I used to work for, I worked for Catholics with Nuns on the Bus, and I worked for Quakers, both groups that were kind of like, abortion is too controversial. And in 2021, I said, no, I got to get my act together. And when I was applying for this job, Jamie, our president, said to me, are you ready to burn some bridges? And I was like, I'll be fine. I have all these faith-based relationships. I have talked to nuns on the bus about abortion. Like when you're driving through the cornfields of Iowa, that's what you talk about because there's no cell phone service. And I was like, it'll be okay. Even Pope Francis had censured them for radical feminist themes. So I was like, I know my people. And when I took this job, it was wild. The people who stopped talking to me. A few months later, the eve of the March for Life, the so-called March for Life in Washington, D.C., we did this projection on the Catholic Basilica in Washington, D.C. that said just truth statements. 1 in 4 abortion patients is Catholic. Stop stigmatizing, start listening. Pro-choice Catholics, you are not alone. And I got doxxed because Salvador Cordileone of San Francisco, Nancy Pelosi's archbishop, went after us on Twitter. Actually, I will say my favorite tweet that I got was, "You are the exact person Jesus warned us about," which that is
nice.
Put that on your business card.
That was amazing. So, right, there's like the first angle of it is the like physical safety. Like we, on my second day on the job, Catholics for Choice got bomb threats on social media. We, more than some of our other repro partners, like we do not show up without security because religion and abortion drives the antis feral. But nobody really talks about the like other side of that, which is the I've been indoctrinated by the Catholic Church and I'm afraid, right? I believe you. I'm a Democrat and I'm a Catholic. So I vote and I'm like, you are not alone, right? Like this is the position, you know, nuns, like they'll talk to you behind closed doors, but as soon as you ask them to be outspoken, it's a little bit shakier. But I find hope, right? In the sense that like there is one thing to talk about what you believe, and then there is another thing to act on it. And sometimes among the Catholics that are that more shaky pushback, it is just that they're afraid to speak out. And that is workable. The physical violence up in my Twitter mentions, I just block them.
Yeah. Anytime you advocate, it's wild.
Yeah.
I often tell a story where I was on Twitter and I was just, I don't know, having a moment. And I was like, hey, let me know that when I die, you'll come to my funeral. I don't want to think that I died alone. And the Westboro Baptist Church came in and said, we'll be there. Okay, great. Not kind of what I was hoping, but there we go.
Liz Winstead, never alone. I love it. I love it. We talk a lot with folks who don't do this work about like, okay, this is the commitment that you make. And as Ashley shared, like, you know, for those of us who are religious leaders doing this work, constant threats, violence, people find where you live. Like in the state of Ohio, everybody's home address, if you're a voter, is public in the file. I get rubber babies, dolls with knives through their throats, all kinds of threats. We've received packages at the church. I am a local church pastor in addition to the work that I do. I've had people interrupt worship services, interrupt weddings that I have performed because of the work that I do. I've had my car vandalized. I've had my car tampered with. Like all of these things, and none of it, frankly, compares to the kind of violence that even one patient in our state experiences when they can't access the care they need. And like trying to remind people that like we don't get up and do this every morning because we love, you know, all the antis and the violence that they're bringing. We do this because even if nobody is committing violence against us, there's violence being committed against those patients on the regular. And until every patient can get the care that they choose and they want, we're going to keep showing up. And, you know, Ashley's point to, you know, having security, our nonprofit, frankly, is fairly small. We do not have the ability to have a lot of kind of that larger consideration. Catholics for Choice does a lot of work for us to say, hey, by the way, can we help you be like safe in this space? And until they started that consideration, I personally, the first time we had that consultation with Catholics for Choice, when they're like, hey, can we help provide some support? I know, you know, we're outside the state, but, you know, now obviously working within Ohio, they're like, can we help you out? I had to talk to my boss and I'm like, what do we need security for? And she's like, because people keep threatening you. And I'm like, yeah, but that happens all the time.
Yeah.
We get so desensitized.
That's just a Tuesday.
Yeah.
I remember having to call you and be like, hey, so this guy who's been giving us bomb threats on Instagram just commented on a shared social media post that is all your people in the picture. Like, here's the email language that you might want to give them a heads up. Like, just FYI.
And I had to be like, I'm very sorry. We just kind of lit him up through our engagement because we're like, listen, if you think about it, it's like, maybe we shouldn't be prodding.
This is Ohio. We're ready for you.
Kristin and I are of the same mind that it's like, you come for us, we're going to come for you. Like, we're ready. We're ready on that.
I got you, Terry.
And I also just want to just reiterate a little bit and then talk about where folks can find you. And that is with the work we do at Abortion Access Front and with the work that you all do, when you get to be in community with the folks who are providing the care and the folks who are getting the care, it's what gets you up every day. And it is the reminder that you are making a difference. And in this sort of large scope of everything seems daunting and Project 2025 and this behemoth wall of seemingly insurmountable just oppression, knowing that you can be there for someone or you've made yourself available enough in your spaces to be that person that can connect someone to an abortion provider or a fund or a faith counselor, that's the shit that matters. And so if you're like, I don't know what to do, we can help hook you up in those kind of small ways where maybe you are just a person with information that can help somebody. So folks, where can people find you? And please, Terry, we'll start with you.
faithchoiceohio.org. You can find all of our stuff, including information about the Jubilee Fund. The Jubilee Fund, again, Ohio's first faith-based abortion fund, provides practical support and spiritual care for everybody who is touching Ohio, passing through Ohio, coming to Ohio for abortion care. And know that I am one of a fantastic team. I often tell people I'm the only straight white male on our team. So when you get me, it's because you kind of lost the draw, right? Our fantastic executive director, Elena Ramsey, is a former evangelical Filipino Appalachian who has been working in this work for many, many a year, over a decade. My fellow faith organizer, Kelly Fox, does a lot of work around reparative justice and what transformative and restorative justice looks like in a race lens as it relates to abortion work. And we have multiple other folks on staff. Just check us out, faithchoiceohio.org, all the fun stuff.
Catholics for Choice are everywhere, but you can find us online at catholicsforchoice.org. One of the things that I will say is we have resources because we know that there are Catholics out there. The challenge that we face is the silent pro-choice majority. So we have resources like prayer cards with St. Bridget. We have Just the Facts. We have a brochure called, in English and Spanish, called You Are Not Alone, which is affirmation for Catholics who have had abortions. We're on social media. We're at protests. We're going to the Vatican. The other thing that I would say is that if you are a Catholic or a former Catholic or even one of our co-conspirators, the big thing that we are trying to do is get people to speak up more about their faith beliefs. And you can do that at catholicsforchoice.org/pledge to pledge to be a Catholic for Choice.
And links to everything we covered today will be in the show notes. And as always, you can find the best, most up-to-the-minute resources on accessing abortion care and funding for your care on our website, aafront.org.
Our Charlie chatbot is on the bottom right and will walk anyone anywhere in the country through their options and resources for abortion. Terry, Ashley, can you stick around for a game and some Q&A after? Okay, good.
Okay.
Fantastic.
And now the party game that is faster than Monopoly and more fun than Taboo, 6 Degrees of Abortion. Normally, this is when we pick a story from the news unrelated to reproductive rights, and Liz has 6 chances to link it to abortion.
But here at Netroots, we are going to have y'all toss us a story, and together, this team of badasses on the stage are going to try to make that connection. So, you have a story, come on up. You see chomping at the bit.
Ooh, she was ready.
All right, here we go. Here's our story.
An Arizona museum tells the stories of ancient animals through their fossils' poop.
Okay, so we have to link animal poop fossils to abortion.
Poop fossils in Arizona.
In Arizona.
My real question is, those poop fossils, I bet, did not all start in Arizona. So the ability to go from state to state is very important.
Well, I was going to say that this Arizona law that was from like 1849 was written by a poop fossil.
There you go.
I can't top that.
We did it in one.
Do we feel like we did it? Because that guy was some bullshit. It was like, everyone's like Comstock. I'm like, here's a weird pedophile poop fossil. So, all right, the Arizona poop fossil to abortion. Thank you. We did it. Team.
Yes, great job, everybody. Woo!
Amazing. All right. Well, before we get to our Q&A,
You know the Feminist Buzzkills podcast would not be possible without the generosity of our fake sponsors. Liz, who's supporting us this week?
this episode of Feminist Buzzkills is sponsored by the law firm of Sue DeHoe and Wynn.
Do you have a mouthy bride displaying an independence outside of her biblical role of wife and mother? An ex-wife who left the marriage bed using the secular evils of no-fault divorce?
Or worse, a wife, an ex-wife, or a perfect stranger who thinks her body is somehow hers and is planning to have an abortion without your permission.
Well, the attorneys at Sue DeHoe and Wynn can help you bring any number of charges against any woman, anywhere, who tries to exert the secular sin of exercising bodily autonomy.
Just listen to some of their satisfied customers. Tyler from Texas. My wife's friends drove her across state lines to get an abortion, but lawyers from Sue DeHoe and Wynn met them at the clinic with the cops, and her friends were arrested for attempted murder, and my wife is under house arrest until the baby was born. Justice served.
Jeff from Birmingham writes, my ex-wife tried to destroy our IVF embryos, but Alabama law says they are children who have more rights than her. Thanks, Sue DeHoe and Wynn. Now she's in prison for child endangerment, and my little froyos are safe.
Contact Sue DeHoe and Wynn attorneys at law today and get a free consultation to help you protect all of your marital property.
Sue DeHoe and Wynn, keeping the U in her uterus. Oh.
We have terrible sponsors. If anybody wants to support us, we're trying.
We're open. We're ready.
Yeah, we're taking the pennies of these shit plague places. It's really just next level.
We left time for a few questions about what you heard in this episode or anything going on in the current state of abortion access. So raise your hand and fire away.
All right. And hand is up.
Hi, I'm a pro-choice Catholic in Kentucky
Woo!
and would very much like to connect with you because I work barely in Kentucky, but I would like to talk to you about that. So how can folks in Kentucky help? Because we have lots of problems there.
You know what I will say? We have materials that just the best thing that anyone can do is spread the word, because the Catholic Church has done such a good job brainwashing and indoctrinating Catholics to think, oh, this is not related to my faith. So if you're interested and you live in a place like Kentucky where you're like, I can't really put a lawn sign on my front yard, maybe, we've got prayer cards, we've got inserts that you can put in your church envelope that says, you know, I support abortion access. Or the one other thing that I will say is ballot initiatives. It's not Kentucky this year, but if you live in a state where there is an anti-abortion ballot initiative, they are being bankrolled by the Catholic bishops. In Ohio right now, 48% of the anti-abortion effort is funded by Catholic bishops. Ohio, same thing. Every state, it is funded by the bishops. So investing in ballot initiatives, even when you're not necessarily in that state, but really spreading the word, are really two important things you can do.
And I just want to lift up Kentucky Health Justice Network,
Yes.
great organization to get paired up with. And Kentucky RCRC is the state affiliate that used to be affiliated with National RCRC. Now all the state affiliates are alone. If you have people who are people of faith, Kentucky RCRC is a great resource too.
Awesome. Thank you for coming to the podcast.
And that is our show. Thank you, Ashley Wilson and Rev Terry Williams, for joining and for showing us what good Christians actually look like. Thank you to Netroots Nation for having us. And as always, thanks to you at home for listening.
Y'all, we have so much stuff going on this month. Please don't go away. Listen up. It's all awesome. If you are in Minneapolis, we have the funnest night of the year, September 28th at the Parkway Theater. It's the 5th annual Do Re Me Too concert to benefit Abortion Access Front. All your favorite women in the Twin Cities music scene come together and belt out the most sexist songs ever. This year features Karen Grotenhouse from the Jayhawks, Janie Winterbauer from the Suburbs, Abby Wolf, Megan Kreider, and so many more. It's a hilarious and powerful night, and tickets are going fast, so get them now at theparkwaytheater.com.
And in just a few weeks, we'll be heading into October, or as we are dubbing it, Comstocktober, because no spooky season would be complete without trying to slay the zombie law known as the Comstock Act.
And at AAF, we have all kinds of events and actions you can take to celebrate Comstocktober with us. First, you can sign our petition to tell Congress to repeal the Comstock Act now. We have almost 50,000 signatures and counting. Let's blow it up. Link to that is in the show notes.
And one step towards killing a zombie law is to enshrine abortion in your state constitution. And AAF wants you to join us to help all of our friends with ballot initiatives make that happen. So mark your calendars for October 8th, 7 p.m. Eastern for Operation Save Abortion, Ballot Initiative Edition. It's a dope, interactive virtual training with organizers from all of the states working to enshrine abortion access. They'll tell us what's at stake and then put us to work in breakout sessions to help get out the vote. It is going to be awesome. For all of the details and where to register, go to OperationSaveAbortion.com.
And we have lots of other fun surprises during Comstocktober, so check our socials at Abortion Front to stay updated. And make sure you're following us on all the socials. Again, that's at Abortion Front in every single platform.
You know, while you're liking all over everything, please also support your Buzzkills by liking, subscribing, and show us some love with a 5-star rating. Let's make a difference and have some fun doing it.
Aside from the upcoming ballot initiative training, check out all of our other OpSave trainings and workshops at OperationSaveAbortion.com. And while you're there, visit our super cool activist calendar, which is full of local and national actions and educational opportunities.
This week, on Monday, September 23rd from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m., Repro Action is hosting a virtual webinar about the recent attacks on IVF and the role of IVF access in the broader reproductive justice movement, including the barriers to IVF faced by patients across the country. They'll highlight the work of IVF advocates and discuss what the future may hold for IVF access and legislation. This is a great way for folks to get educated and involved in the fight to protect IVF. Link in our activist calendar.
Next week on the pod, we are so excited. We have comedian, actor, and writer Zainab Johnson, and from the Strict Scrutiny podcast, Kate Shaw will join us to break down the insidious details of Project 2025 and how it could affect abortion access.
Join our Patreon. You'll support great content and get cool FBK merch and experiences. All pledges support this pod and all our activism at Abortion Access Front. Pledge at patreon.com/feministbuzzkills. FBK is edited by Remy DeTournay and is produced by Abortion Access Front.
And finally, we leave you with Mary Harrington, a woman showing us her whole ass when she reveals what she thinks is missing from your sex life. Hint, fear.
It seems to me that a good place to start would be a feminist movement against the pill and for rewilding sex, returning the danger to sex, returning the intimacy, and really the consequentiality to sex. And a great deal follows from an intentional reconnection of women's opting intentionally to reconnect with the fullness of our embodied nature.
Feminist Buzzkills, the podcast from Abortion Access Front. New episodes drop Friday. When BS is poppin', we pop off. And if you want to support our podcast and all the work of Abortion Access Front, like, subscribe, and join our Patreon at patreon.com/feministbuzzkills.